Welcome to the West Ham Voice. Thank you for joining me on a Friday morning. I hope you've all had a good week. And maybe there's finally a bit of good news coming our way with regards to transfers. Has David Moyes and Tim Steidten finally come to some kind of working arrangements whereby perhaps both men have found common ground in what's best for West Ham United in the transfer market? You see, I keep trying to make sense of or see some logic and positive reasoning for the current lack of transfer activity at West Ham United right now. We either have a master plan or we are in total disarray. As it stands, we're one of a few clubs left in the Premier League who have yet to buy any players, and I guess there's got to be one club that's going to be last. So why not us, right? Look, the summer transfer window has been open for 5 weeks since the 14th of June, but it will remain open until 11 p.m. on Friday, the 1st of September. So that's a whole 6 weeks before it shuts. So we're not quite at the halfway stage yet. And in essence, there's still plenty of time to do many deals. But many fans will tell you that the season kicks off in just over 3 weeks' time? And we should have our new squad ready to hit the ground running when we visit Bournemouth on Saturday, the 12th of August. There will also be reasonable concern over what happened last season when we did our transfer business so late that more than half our new starters were nowhere near ready for the season start, and that same excuse for our season not improving was still being used about bedding in new players as we entered 2023. So it's totally understandable why fans are fretting. But are we in the same position this summer as we were last summer? As I mentioned on my West Ham Weekly show on Monday night, last summer was a bit of a revolution for our squad because we needed 8 players to come in, not only to make up the squad numbers, but to also improve the quality of the squad in several areas. So given that we did so much business last summer, do we need the same again this summer? As it stands, if we're looking at purely squad numbers, then we really only need 2, perhaps 3 players at this moment in time. Look, we obviously need a replacement for Declan Rice in midfield. I believe we need another centre-back to provide cover for Kurt Zouma, Naifa Gerd and Angelo Ogbonna. Or in fact, not just provide cover, but to also be challenging these players for a place in the starting lineup. And perhaps another reason is to give David Moyes the option to be able to play a solid 3 at the back with wing-backs rather than the flat back 4. Then if you're going to say we need a third player, that would be really to replace Manuel Lanzini, who, to be honest, wasn't really a regular starter in the league last season, or in the lineup last season at all. Now, many of you will argue that we need far more than just 2 or 3 players in order to actually improve the quality of the squad. And again, we need several more players this summer for that reason. And I'm sure you'll all reel off, a list of positions that you think need strengthening, such as another right back, another left back, another striker, and so on. But that brings into question the quality of our current squad. And I asked on Monday night, is our core squad as bad as many fans might think? Now, many would say that we have to look only at our poor league form last season and the performances to give you that answer. But the counter argument is, like I said a moment ago, is that we bought players into in the transfer window quite late, and it took a lot longer for most of them to settle in than we hoped for. As you know, last summer we recruited 8 players, of which 5 were outside the Premier League, and this is one, if not the main reason given for taking the time for the squad to settle, and the same reason given for poor performances, and so on and so forth. So therefore, why are we not doing our business a lot quicker this time round? Well, as mentioned, we currently only need 2 or 3 players to make up squad numbers. And that suggests to me that David Moyes is probably happy with the quality of the squad that he currently has at his disposal, hence not rushing in to bring in any more players at this moment in time. Now, I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, that he won't bring in any players at all. I'm merely trying to put in place some process to the madness that seems to be ongoing with West Ham and transfers. However, all that changes should any more players leave this summer. At the moment, we only need 2 or 3 replacements. But if all of a sudden we go from needing just 2 or 3 players to maybe 5, 6, 7 players, then the landscape changes immensely. As I also said on Monday night, it looks like it'll be one player out, a one player in policy. So if the latest rumours are to be believed, um, we're not only to be looking at replacing Declan Rice and Manuel Lanzini, but we also need a centre back, as I've already said. But we may also need to be looking to replace Cresswell, Fornals, Soucek, Antonio, and Kamaka. So suddenly we do need to go from 2 or 3 players to maybe 6 or maybe even 7 players this summer. And perhaps this is why Moyes seems to be so focused on Premier League experience when we're continuously linked with the likes of Harry Maguire, João Paulina, James Ward-Prowse, and so on. But the price of these players is quite prohibitive. Around 35 million for Maguire, 40, 45 million for Paulina, plus at least another 25 million or more for Ward-Prowse. They actually want Southampton 40 million, which would all but wipe out the 105 million pounds we've received for Declan Rice, and would end up with an even older average squad age than we already have. So cue Tim Steidten. He has already been credited with linking us to Yusuf Faufana of Monaco and left backs Ian Matson of Chelsea, plus the latest link on Thursday of young left back from Rennes and Adrian Truffert. And of course, attacking under 21 winger from Man City, Carlos Borges. Now, let's focus for a moment on who else, before we go on to who might be coming in, let's focus for a moment on who really might be leaving the club this summer. I understand why there are other clubs linked to the likes of Pablo Fornals, Aaron Creswell, Mikel Antonio, and Thomas Soucek, because every one of these players is in the last year of their contracts. But of those 4 players, we're only likely to see probably 2 leaving. And that, of course, is Creswell and Antonio. Of course, there's another name continuously linked to leave, and that's Gianluca Scamacca. But the story there hasn't really changed. He will only leave if a club buys him outright, and there's no desire. And if a club actually pays the money that we paid for him, which is circa 30 million pounds plus, and he will only leave if he's bought outright. There's no desire to allow the player to go out on loan because it will cost us to replace him, unless, of course, we agree a loan deal to bring in someone like Armando Broja from Chelsea. And even then, a loan deal for Scamacca will have to have an outright obligation to buy, like I said, for the price that we paid for him. The simple truth of the matter is Roma, or any other Italian club for that matter, cannot afford his sale price. So it looks to me that Scamacca will stay. Let's focus for a minute on the other 4 names. Pablo Fornals and Thomas Soucek. I think, unlikely to leave the club this summer, as there will be both useful squad members, especially for Europe as well as the Premier League. And it's suggested that something will happen with their contracts this summer. I've been told, and I'm sure you've all heard, that Aaron Creswell's link to Wolves is pretty much nailed on. And the player is likely to be offered at least a 2-year contract at the West Midland club, plus a significant wage increase on what he's currently on, which is one of the lowest at West Ham, around 52 grand a week. So whilst we're on the subject of Creswell, we've got to clear up this whole thing with his contract. It was my understanding that his contract extension had been settled some time ago rather than only recently. After all, why would Creswell agree to a contract extension just recently when he could have actually been a free agent this summer and gone to another club with a nice little signing on fee? But having said all that, it does look like Creswell is on his way to Wolves. And now, Antonio. Now, we know that Antonio has been pushing for a move away from West Ham United for quite some time. And the appeal of Saudi Arabia seems to be looming large. Moyes doesn't really want to let him go, but Antonio's salary could go through the roof if he gets his move to Saudi Arabia. So I kind of fully expect him to leave. So that means at this stage, we need up to 5 players to come in: a Rice replacement, centre back cover, Creswell's replacement, Antonio's replacement, and if you really want to add up the numbers, Lanzini's replacement as well. Now, with the £105 million we got for Rice, if we add another, 3 million for the sale of Creswell, plus another 10 million for the sale of Antonio, then our transfer pot then increases to £118 million, give or take. And herein lies what we now do with the money. If it's to be believed that David Moyes is fully in charge of transfers, then as mentioned, of that £105 million, it will go towards Maguire, 35 million, Ward-Prowse, they want 40 million. We're likely to offer 25 million. And Paulina, 45 million. So that's well over the 105 million pounds that we got for Declan Rice, which will be spent on a 30-year-old and 2 28-year-olds. It's not going to happen. And here's what I believe is to be more realistic. Let's start with the 2 exciting stories that broke on Thursday. And that's, of course, the imminent signing of Carlos Borges from Man City. Look, Borges, he comes in at a fee, apparently, of around 15 million pounds. And there will undoubtedly be a buyback clause that will be inserted by Man City into any contractual agreements. Over the past couple of years, City have made in the region of something like 120 million pounds on youth player sales alone. And their investment in their youth system 10 years ago has proven to be very, very viable and very profitable. Borges is one of the most exciting prospects to come out of the academy. Last season, he ripped up the Premier League too by making 24 appearances and scoring 21 goals. And add to that a further 6 appearances in the UEFA Youth League, scoring 4 goals and more goals in the cup competitions. He's a left-footed player who is comfortable operating in the wide areas on either side of the pitch. He possesses excellent pace and physicality and is extremely skillful on the ball. At Man City, he has been predominantly used from the left side, where his quick burst of acceleration is useful from that side, from his strong side. Moreover, he was even used as a left back in his younger days and has occasionally played on the right wing as well. Borges stays wide on the touchline and there's no stopping him once he's isolated against fullbacks. He uses his place and low centre of gravity to breeze past opponents. If this is why we dropped our serious interest in Harvey Barnes, then you have to hand it to West Ham that this could prove to be a shrewd bit of transfer business. At around 15 million pounds, he's 20 million pounds cheaper than Barnes, and he's got years ahead of him to grow even into an even better footballer. It's suggested that the deal is close, and by the time this video goes out on Friday morning, Borges may have already signed for West Ham United, which would finally kickstart our transfer activity to life. Then we look at the left-back situation, and with the news that Aaron Creswell is about to go to Wolves, a move for a new left-back is welcome news indeed. Many fans have been crying out for a new left-back for quite a number of years now, and to come to the club, and we may finally get our wish. There are 2 players linked specifically to this area: Adrian Truffert of Rennes and Ian Matson of Chelsea. I'm going to focus on Truffert because that's the story that's looking more likely at the moment. 21 years of age, valued at around 15 million pounds. He's been a regular for the French under-21 squad and is on the periphery of being called back into the senior French squad, having already won 1 cap in the senior team to date. He's been grabbing the headlines at Rennes last season and described as a wonder kid for his performances. He made 38 appearances in all competitions last season, including 8 in the Europa League, and he has 7 assists to his name, and by all accounts, it sounds as if his ball crossing is as good as that of Creswell's in his earlier days. He's an attacking fullback, effective in both parts of the field, where he doesn't shirk his responsibilities, primarily to be a defender. We may get to hear more of the approach for Truffert over the coming days, and of course, he will have come highly recommended by none other than ex-Rennes teammate, Naifa Gerd. Now, there has been talk of There has been talk of Chelsea's young left back Ian Maatsen, who's had an excellent season on loan at Burnley last season, and he's valued at around between 18 to 20 million pounds. Now, it's either Truffert or Maatsen, but both are rumoured to be Steiden finds, who would be ideal long-term replacements for Aaron Creswell, and both will have big on sell-on values over the coming years. But it looks like, as I've said, it's Truffert that we have set our sights on, and as mentioned, it will come as no surprise if a bid was made imminently for him. Now, let's go back to other areas we need cover for. Like I said, Borges, a shoe-in for Lanzini, Truffert, a replacement for Creswell. And what about central defence? Well, we go back to what seems to be David Moyes' preference, and that, of course, is Harry Maguire. Now, look, I know many people don't like Harry Maguire. People say, he's rubbish, etc. But you don't get to stay in the England team if you're not if you're a crap footballer. Look, he's a no-nonsense defender. And on his day, if he's asked to just do that, defend, then he does a decent job of it. Now, look, we're not going to buy Maguire for £35 million. I doubt it very much. I think that would be a push too far. 30 years of age, £30 million. His salary is something like £200,000 a week. However, a loan option to buy could be an agreeable option for all related. And if Man United agree to subsidise at least half his wages, then all of a sudden it looks a much more generous proposition. Get him on loan, get his money, get his wages subsidised. It could be that Man United might be up for that in order to get the player off their books. But as it stands, it is Maguire who apparently isn't so keen on a move. There's no way Sullivan will allow David Moyes to spend a large chunk of the Declan Rice money on a player who's 30 years of age. So a loan deal could be the suitable thing all round. What about central midfield? Well, we go back to João Paulina. There's talk that West Ham are looking at going in with another offer, but I cannot seem to. Seem to think that we're going to offer much more than we already have, which is around the 45 million pound mark. Again, decent player, but Paulina, 28 years of age, won't have an awful lot of sell-on value. And so that would look like it'd be a bit of not a waste of money, but maybe money could be better spent in other areas. Time will tell what happens in central midfield, because it is said that Steiden is rumoured to be pushing for Monaco's Youssouf Faufana, who for around £35 million is 4 years younger than Paulina and £10 million cheaper. Faufana is an excellent footballer, but when you look at the stats that compare Faufana and Paulina, they kind of come a little bit close. In fact, Paulina has got better pass accuracy, more take-on success rate, more aerial and ground dual success rates. So I can kind of see why David Moyes would prefer him, because he's proven those stats in the Premier League. But while some may argue that Paulina is a decent player, has Faufana still got room to grow and continue to improve over the coming years? And again, he could end up having a better sell-on value than Paulina would have. With David Moyes determined to bring in experienced Premier League players, it will be interesting to see who wins that mini battle. And then we move on, of course, to another midfielder that's targeted, as people say, by David Moyes, and that's James Ward-Prowse. Now, James Ward-Prowse is an interesting proposition because, as I said a moment ago, Southampton do not want to negotiate a player and money deal. They want a straight £40 million. Now, no one else has come in for Ward-Prowse at that money, at 40 million. And I don't think, unfortunately for Southampton, they're going to really get that sort of money for him. If they want anything over £25 million for Ward-Prowse, I think they might struggle. And there is rumour, as I've said, that we might offer around 20 million plus Flynn Downs as a part cash, part player exchange deal. But Southampton want the money, which then sort of knocks out Downs being part of that deal. And to be quite honest with you, I'm quite glad if the Downs deal doesn't happen. I think Flynn Downs, people may not necessarily see him as the same level as Declan Rice, but every time he's been called to play for West Ham United, he's done reasonably well. You can't deny that he's been pretty solid for the club in his first season in the Premier League, and I think Flynn Downs can only improve. So if Southampton don't accept an offer, a straight cash offer of say £25 million for Ward Prowse, I don't think that deal is going to happen because there are, as I said, alternatives that we could go for, and Conor Gallagher could be a better proposition. He won't necessarily come cheaper. He may be 35 million pounds. Chelsea may not want to let him go for much less than that. But he's a player who's only 23 years of age, 5 years younger than Ward Prowse. He could offer us 3 or 4 good years at the club. And again, sell-on value would be much more prominent for the likes of Gallagher than it would be for Ward Prowse. And finally, we come to Antonio, of course, and his move. Will he get his move to Saudi Arabia? And if we do, what do we do with replacing him? Well, we could go for Borges. Like I said, he's not my cup of tea, to be really honest with you. I think I said in the show on Monday night, Borges, decent, but for me, he only had one good half season on loan at Southampton, and then he fell away for the rest of that season. And then last season, he had a serious injury that kept him out, etc. So I don't really know. And for me, there seems to be a sort of a clear choice that we maybe promote from within. Divine Mbama is very much our version of Man City's Carlos Borges. He's been praised by David Moyes for his work ethic, but will that be enough for him to earn a promotion into the senior squad on a regular basis? Or will the player go out on loan next season? I cannot help feeling that Mbama will probably benefit from a loan deal. But if Antonio does leave, perhaps David Moyes may give the young lad a chance to demonstrate whether he's good enough for the Premier League next season at this stage of his career. And of course, the only other player that we have to speak about is Gianluca Kamaka. I've already mentioned this. A loan deal to Serie A doesn't seem like it's very likely. But even if he was allowed to leave on loan, like I said, there are strong rumours that David Moyes would want to bring in someone like Borges, maybe on loan. It could work. I prefer to keep Kamaka, to be honest with you. But if he did go out on loan, Kamaka, it would have to be with an obligation to buy rather than, say, an option to buy. We'd want to get our money back. So let's summarise. Creswell looks like he's leaving. Antonio also looks like he's leaving. So that will be 4 players that have left West Ham United this summer. And I think we need additional cover for centre-back, as I've already said. So it looks like, we could do with at least 4, maybe 5 players to come in this transfer window once Cresswell and Antonio leave. Like I said, Borges looks like the first through the door, with Truffert soon to follow. That's circa what, £30 million? Maguire could still arrive on loan. Then we have the task of bringing in central midfielders with both Paulina and Ward Prowse as the likeliest targets for Moyes. But given that Southampton, as I said, don't want to deal with Downs, then we're going to have to find £85 million to buy those 2 players. When we can look at maybe bringing in Gallagher instead of, say, Ward Prowse for £35 million. So with 118 million in the bank, we can end up spending 110 million for those 5 players. Would that be a good transfer window for West Ham United? I don't know. You tell me. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're new to the channel, do hit the like, subscribe, and bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. And I'll see you all very soon.